word why. What a curious word. The kind of word that can make us cringe, feel defensive, or even distant. But you know, sometimes why is the key. The key that can unlock so much to our lives. Join me as we explore the why with fascinating contributors to the world, those that entertain us, inform us, teach us about life, and if we're lucky, inspire the next in all of us. I'm your host, Dr. Rod Berger, and welcome to HeadRoom, a production of Rainlight and co-produced by Old Soul. Let's go. I am very aware of how lucky I am. I feel as if I have had a front row seat to history in all the different experiences that I have been very fortunate to be a part of. And when I found out there was an opportunity to interview someone who has piloted a rocket ship up to the International Space Station, I thought, well, that might cover it. That might sort of be the bookend to all the experiences that I've had. And I've so appreciated the audience that the many that I know and those that I don't know, but I know are listening and follow my travels and my pursuits. And today is really unlike anything I've ever been able to be a part of, which is a discussion, a conversation with a gentleman who last year, almost this time of year, piloted a rocket up to the International Space Station, and to get his perspective on just what it's like up there. We've seen it in movies. We've heard people talk about it. We know some of our favorite actors and just people in our sort of in our world, right? The Tom Hanks of the world that do so much for space and the storytelling of space. But there's something I will tell you personally in having a conversation with somebody who has been there. And so this is such an exciting conversation with an individual, John Shoffner, who just I get the sense that he could be the neighbor next door, and just something really powerful about that and accessible. I hope you enjoy. I'm smiling as I start this discussion for a number of reasons, and I was saying off air that I've had the honor and the privilege of spending time with some incredible people who have made just wow accomplishments sort of abound in ways that I think really stretch the imagination. And today we're gonna really push beyond that into different horizons with astronaut John Shoffner. What an experience. We're going to talk about what he's been doing with his Preside Foundation, the second annual Space Art and Poetry contest, and just really getting a backdrop and background on what John is doing and his love of space, of the unknown over time. Let me give you a little background, a bit of background on John prior to him going up on SpaceX Falcon 9 and piloting the Axiom 2, which just saying that sounds incredibly cool at any dinner party or soccer field. And John, in May of 2023, astronaut and steam advocate and business pioneer John Shoffner served as pilot on Axiom Space AX2 mission to the International Space Station. I believe you spent 10 days there, John, if I remember correctly. And then we're coming up on the year anniversary. You obviously have been a steam advocate for quite some time, and your contest, we're now in the second annual, but it's garnered over 930 entries in the past from 26 countries, participating in multiple life science research experiments that shape the future of space exploration. The mission that you were on was a 598th person to orbit the Earth. That's your claim to fame, and it's the first. You're also the first Alaskan-born astronaut of record. You're an accomplished aviator, skydiver, race car driver, cyclist, and lifelong space enthusiast. And he discovered his love for art and science at an early age, and it never left him. Although space was his first passion, he took an alternative career path. He formed Duraline Corporation into an international company developing and patenting multiple processes for materials and methods for the placement of fiber optic cables during the 80s and 90s. And he retired as CEO in 97, and Duraline remains a world market leader. John, there are so many places to go, and I'm going to keep going to the space sort of metaphor here. Take me back. So last May, and you spent approximately 2 years in training. And I know that you've said in previous interviews that you always knew you were going to space. You just didn't know when.
Always.
Always. And the moment that you're basically, for lack of a better, I guess, phrasing here, buckled in, and there's no going back. Are you John at your current age? Are you John as a 7 year old? Is there a moment of peace that sort of washes over you with regards to what could happen or not happen? I think the risks that you take outside of sort of the romantic sort of nature of going in space. Give me that moment when you heard the click that you were in.
Yeah, well, that brings back a nice warm feeling in me, actually. Space has always been part of me. I fell in love with that. I grew up in the early days of the original space race, when we were trying to outpace the Russians and get things done. And space was the biggest thing in the news. So it just wrapped around all of us. That's what we followed. So on Saturdays, we would have cardboard boxes pretending to be Gemini pilots, and we were all astronauts at 8, 9, and 10 years old. Um, and I just love systems. I love science. So that just hung in there. And I didn't, for some reason, didn't chase that down as a career. I just didn't do that. I guess I had 1,000 interests. But going through life, I always knew that, somehow I would get to space. I mean, it was not an active thought. It's kind of irrational if you were to voice that too often, you get locked up. Um, but my wife and I were having coffee one morning. This was like just a little over 4 years ago or so, 3 years ago. And she noticed a news article about private astronaut programs and commercial astronaut programs. And she tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Look, right here, you can finally go to space." She'd heard me say it our entire life together. We were together 20 some years. Um, and I knew right then I was actually going to space. That's the moment I actually knew that I was going to go, because all I had to do was answer the question on the website and say I'm in, which I did. They eventually responded, because it was one of those early websites at Axiom Space when it said info at Axiom Space. No
And
phone number. So so I typed out an email and I sent it to info at Axiom Space, like something like, "Hey, just tell me what I need to do next." And they never answered, because nobody checks info at Axiom Space.
then somebody did.
Finally, somebody did. Yeah.
So in that
So,
in that moment before the countdown, are you feeling a sense of purpose? Are you feeling a sense that all the efforts that you did, all the efforts that sort of that went into building a corporation in the fiber optic space, and all that hard work was a part of a narrative you didn't, it was a thread that you didn't really realize where it was going in providing opportunities and sort of perspective for you to be ready to sit in that seat, an Axiom too?
well, that sort of maturity to that feeling, came along the way, because I was in training for 2 years. I volunteered as backup pilot for Axiom 1, AX1, which was the first private flight, and then as pilot for AX2. So I was at the Johnson Space Center and SpaceX training for a long, long time. So I was well grooved into my role by the time we got to the launch pad on that day. Um,
Emotional for you?
um, I had lots of emotion before that. On launch day it was different, but when I would be in a conversation, or someone would ask, like in a situation like this, where someone was asking about how I came to be there, it would be very easy for me to get emotional about it, because you slowly realize that one of your life's major dreams is actually happening. It is actually happening. And it's a pretty big dream. Someone says they dream of going to space, or wanting to be in space, and then when you finally understand that it is actually going to happen, yeah, I'm kind of an emotional guy anyway. I give it up pretty easily.
Is it a heavyweight, John, when we think about, I mean, so few people have had the opportunity that outside of resources that sort of the ball bounced in a direction that sort of found you under the light for you to be able to go up to space. I mean, I share that because I had a period of time within 6 weeks. I got to visit the baptism site in Jordan where Jesus was baptized. And the day before I had interviewed a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. And then 6 weeks later, I am in audience with the Pope. And I thought, this is, I don't know if this is a miracle. I don't know what sort of the universe is telling me, but I struggled to understand why I was so lucky in those moments to experience things that I think, on balance, a lot of people would absolutely want to experience and enjoy. And I'm just wondering if some of that sort of goes by the film strip of your mind when you think about this incredible opportunity representing our species.
Well, it sure does. And on an interesting level. It's not on any level that I'm happy for myself necessarily, although I'm thrilled to play the role, is you become aware slowly that you're doing something that so many others take awareness of, that you have to do something with the information that you're bringing back. You're about to experience something that is of great value to share, in that it can be of high value to others, particularly young people, students, like I was when I was 10. And you ask early on, was I going as me or was I going as my younger self? I was for sure going as my younger self. I was that 10-year-old going to space.
With the Ed White picture painting, right?
Yeah. Because well, that's evidence, I guess, undeniable to me and everyone now. That, of course, that was built into me. But I even told Axiom that, I'll go, but I want to be able to do this and come back with a voice, with a purpose. And that was the essence of creating the Perside Foundation, was a platform to use, because a month before I was just John Shoffner. Yeah. My wife and my cat might listen to me, you know,
And we're
and
not going to comment on the order.
on the order, and a few close friends.
Right.
But a month after the flight, everybody wants to talk to an astronaut, right?
Sure.
So, and I was prepared for that to happen, and that it was not going to be an egotistical thing, that it was going to be a thing of value that I could actually use for a purpose, and I wanted to use that to influence students and teachers. In fact, teachers, I think, are my first customer in that role, to show them that they have the power to attend to a student's vision of themselves and to
You
help
know,
it.
the sort of the those of us here on planet Earth, the conventional wisdom is that travel changes you forever. It changes sort of the DNA, the makeup of oneself. Um, I know people will talk about getting the African fever. If you go to Africa, go to the continent, it will change you, and I can attest to that. As I prepare to go again to the continent in a few weeks, tell me how space changed you in ways that you could not have conceived of prior to launch, because if I have had these experiences going to the African continent, I can't imagine what it would be like to see planet Earth as a marble below me, where everything that I thought I knew is completely different, just in the way in which I'm experiencing gravity.
Yeah, well, there are different contexts that you find yourself in each day when you're in orbit. Um, there's the moment, the context of when you're busy working and you realize you're in orbit, but you're working in orbit. So you're using the fact of being in orbit to do something, and you're realizing that, well, this is the only place I can actually do this, whether we're involved in a bit of research or I'm holding up a piece of children's art and letting it float in front of the camera so they can see it later. And that is going to be a magical moment to them. And I did a lot of direct broadcasts to classrooms that I knew I was amazing young people. So they were being thrilled. So the fact that I could do that, taught me a lot of lessons of how we we should use whatever, I wouldn't call them skills, but whatever talents or values that we accrete to, use that to some sense of value. Um, and I took that as an obligation. I came back, and people always talked about going to space, you get this overview effect and you see Earth for what it is and how small it is. And it truly, is remarkable. There's a thin film of atmosphere that you can physically see over it. It is razor thin compared to what you're looking at out there. And you realize that everything you've ever heard or known about is right there has ever happened in history is right there below you. So having the ability to come back and speak to that does change you. It gives you the perspective, and that people will sit and listen to that. So you better get your story straight when you tell them something, because it's something that they're going to take on board. So
I'm so glad you brought up story. I'm a lover of story and storytelling. I think we all think that we are storytellers in our own mind, and maybe we're just different in the what form and function of the way in which we tell stories or convey experiences, whether we're grandparents or parents or just teachers, right, or community members or friends sharing stories. How did storytelling take on a different level of importance for you as you were communicating with classrooms? Did you feel a sense of responsibility to paint a picture that it's probably very difficult to do justice by what you would be seeing outside the window while you're being sort of zoomed in down to a classroom?
look, kids like seeing things float. That was the first cool thing. Was, I found myself once talking to one classroom where it was just me in front of the camera, and I told them, I said, right now I'm in front of a camera, and the only evidence that you have that I'm in space is that I'm telling you this. So then I just let go and I flipped around upside down. And I said, now you can tell I'm actually in space. And you could hear the kids, squealing and making fun voice. So demonstrating these things, letting them see that space is real. I think that's something that they hear and they see pictures. But when they see themselves talking to someone from there and it's actually real, it just delights them, and it turns on their minds, and we know that they are thinking of themselves, wanting to put themselves into that same position, seeing themselves doing that. So you create a sort of role model, again, not in an egotistical way. It's just you represent something that they see themselves as being capable of achieving.
Talk with me a little bit about sort of internal voice, like the voice that we all have in our own heads that, tells us to pay attention, or we're trying to soak in a moment, whether we're at, maybe we're at a World Series game, whatever that is, we want to sort of document and stamp it in our memory bank. Was your internal voice sort of pinging at a different volume level while you were in space to sort of at a heightened level where your senses were trying to soak it all in so that you didn't, it's sort of when you're on vacation and you're halfway through and you think, gosh, in 3 or 4 days, I won't be here. I won't be sort of staring at this mountain range. Talk a little bit about the senses and how they were impacted through the arc of the mission of a 10-day mission.
Sure. Well, space is a busy place. Um, Working on the space station, which was, I guess, my huge takeaway for me personally from all of this was it was such an incredible experience, experiencing participating as a crew member on the International Space Station on a daily workflow basis. We all had jobs. We trained for these jobs beforehand. We each day was timelined very precisely in 15-minute intervals. So we had this very, very tight schedule. And the one regret is that you stay so busy that you have very little time to just sit and do exactly what you were describing there, stop to soak it in. But now I can think back at some of my favorite moments was when things were, and they only lasted 1 or 2 seconds at a time. When I would poke my head out of the Dragon capsule in the morning, headed for my first cup of coffee before the day got started, I'd have to stop and look and reorient myself, because things are like you come out of the Dragon capsule facing backwards and down, and the brain can't figure things out at first. You have to work hard in order to reorient yourself and go. And there's moments like that that I enjoyed, little things like I'm actually in space, and I just got out of my sleeping bag, and now I'm going to go get my morning coffee in a space station. Um, those are the moments I look back at that I enjoyed personally. And then, the work stuff and the things that I did otherwise, they were activities. But those nice moments of being in space, that's what I want, students and other people to think about, because it's here. The future and the ability to go to space and work and do things it's here to stay.
Is the sense of time up there different? Did you feel like you had a different relationship to time?
You never have enough is the thing. It's a lot like here, and time does not move too much differently there than here, other than you're just constantly, busy. Um, it's a lot. It, it's like going on vacation with a big family, and you're in charge of all of it, and there's everybody's doing a different thing. You're having to take care of a lot of stuff, and but sometimes not the things you want to do for yourself. It's a pretty busy place.
Talk with me about the maybe the inner conflict that again I am assuming this based on if I were in your shoes, but that feeling that the odds that you are going to go back are probably not that likely. Maybe they are, and you've got something you want to announce. But to have an experience like that, and in all likelihood, maybe that is the only time you'll go up to space or the space station. Is that a internal or mental sort of wrestling exercise in knowing that that experience is going to have to stand the test of time within your own memory bank?
HeadRoom is produced by Old Soul, a one-stop marketing agency that understands the power of brand and nuance. Reach out to my guy Matt at Old Soul and supercharge your brand and content strategy. That's Old Soul. Shoot Matt a note at aoldsoul.com. That's AOLDSOUL.com. And now, back to our guest.
Well, I miss the station. I miss space flight, and I would still be there if it were up to me. No question about it. Well, the interesting thing about the time we are in now is you can actually go to space just by deciding that you want to go. This 5 years ago, that didn't exist. 10 years ago, it was an impossibility. But today it's real. You can say to you and three of your friends, hey, let's all get together and let's put up a space mission. And there are companies that will assemble that for you and then help you plan your mission. Axiom Space does this. This is their thing. And there are others. And within a year and a half or 2 years, you will go to space. I mean, it just will happen. Of course, it's expensive, but it's available today. So for me, it's not a matter of, hey, that was a once in a lifetime shot. Maybe it was, but it's not. It would only be by choice, not because it can't happen.
So is that something that you do actively wrestle with?
Of course, yeah. When I'm asked the question, I say yes, I am going back. So,
Oh, you are going. Okay.
well, yeah, that's my plan, I suppose. But there's a lot of things that I need to have happen first, in order to do that. Um, but there's a lot of work I want to do here. I've not finished using the material and the learnings that I got from Spaceflight 1, from AX2, that I want to translate to good value here. And I think initially there was a little bit of pushback about private people going to space. Was it a fair use of time and money and resources, private people going to space? So one of the watchwords of my flight was I wanted to demonstrate the value that a private astronaut or the private astronaut program can actually bring back to Earth. And in more than just the research that we go there to do, which is quite valuable and important. Speaking to that for a moment, when you send more people to space, you open up the avenues for more researchers to get their science on orbit. It's the ISS National Laboratory is in charge of a lot of the science on the space station. NASA's in charge of a lot, but it's a very small pipeline. And there's a lot of research that really wants to happen on orbit, but it's constrained. So the more orbital platforms that get developed, the more people that go and come to space, the more valuable research that gets done. So we support that. Of course, the other aspect is what is the true value to humanity in general, or what can value translation be from private and commercial people going to space? And I wanted to demonstrate a small portion of that, and I wanted to do that through supporting STEM activities and
And
students.
I think you've done that in spades. Let's pivot to that. Why art? Talk a little bit about the contest. and what it means to you to have visual representation, or I shouldn't even say that, just artistic representation of the way in which we think maybe space looks, the way in which we might think of ourselves in space, and to then sort of commingle that together with the wonder and the beauty and the inspiration of a child's eye.
Excellent line of thinking, because I'm a firm believer, and because I know it to be true for myself, and many people I've talked to acknowledge it, that when you're 10, 12 years old, you've already formed this interesting notion of who you are and what your interest is, what you really, really like, how you see yourself. And for some reason, kids know about space. It's not taught in school, but you ask a kid about space and they light up. And we said, well, because I like art and all the things of art. I wanted to ask them just a simple question. What do you think it would look like if you lived in space? And we get these amazing notions that we know come out of their head. Their own inner vision is coming out. And some of the art is so fantastic that it just blows us away. We know what is in kids' minds, and you get them asking themselves questions about where they fit into that. They start seeing themselves in these roles. So we hope that leads to a step off for them to want to do something more or better or greater and get involved in more things. So it was just a mechanism to get children to think about themselves in the role of what space flight could be.
You said at the outset that you are, well, we're all emotional beings, but that emotions for you are maybe more closer to the surface. I would imagine that you potentially get as emotional thinking about the young people that submit their visions through that childlike, kaleidoscope, as you did even when you were in space yourself. Is that a fair read on you as a person and as a human?
Oh, for sure. We had a chance to interact directly with some of these after the flight, and they were so pure and genuine in their approach. And many of the children, I interact directly with classrooms during the year. Teachers invite me to Zoom into their classroom and meet their students, and they'll come up one by one and ask questions. And they're sincere. No one's putting them up to ask this question. They want to know. They truly want to know. And some of them they're all so delightful in that they're looking for answers for themselves. And I just know that that will lead to them creating a pathway for themselves. And that's what the whole mission was about for me, was if I can replace one of me to then go forward and to do something else and to be a creator, then that will all have been worth it.
We'll give reference where people can go to learn more about the contest and to follow, obviously, the artwork and just to be a part of the community, because I think that's incredibly important, John. As we put a bit of a wrapper on this mission, using on this discussion, I'm curious, when you are maybe in your backyard or you're somewhere where we've hit nighttime and you're looking up, do you find that questions that you had prior to your experience about sort of the big why for us as humans, that those have been maybe not answered, but explored at a deeper and more personal level for you, that you almost look up and see like there's a relationship up to that unknown, that great big sky?
Yeah, for sure. And I think about that daily now, and I think about it more and more the further I get away from this space flight, because I feel like I left a lot undone. There was so much more to do. Um, I want to go back and do more, and I wanted to go back and do more for the community of students and young people that will be the next true leaders. Because you go to a classroom of fourth graders, and you're looking at people that in 25 years will be running our planet. And you're looking at Martian astronauts. You're looking at a whole bunch of different types of people. So they all want to know. They're hungry for this. And I just want to be able to give them my form of an answer so they can carry it to the next level. So I hope I can go back. I hope I can go back and work on more of what I discovered there. It's like getting pulled out of a movie early.
Hmm.
I just want to go back and finish the story.
That's gonna sit with me, that getting pulled out of a movie early. Well, I will tell you this. I know we haven't talked prior to our time during this interview, but I find you incredibly likable and a wonderful representative of humanity, the best of us. In there's not We live in a very synthetic world in a lot of ways, and it's really nice to see authenticity living and breathing, and providing a bit of a telescope into what's possible. And I think that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And um, I look forward to seeing you and on your next flight, and supporting those that want to take their first flight. And I want to make sure they can go to the correct website. So everybody, I would encourage you to follow John. The website is wonderful about the contest, the art and poetry contest. You can go to spaceartcontest.com, learn more. You're going to see just wonderful art. And you're right, John. I look at it and I think, if I just sat with that one piece, what would I be thinking? Is there a piece of music I'd want to listen to as I thought about what that child drew? So thank you for inspiring me. Thank you for inspiring the audience, and Godspeed on your future travels.
Been a pleasure. Thank you, Rod.
I can't say that I was able to give you or I a ticket to space and to the International Space Station for that matter. But I do hope that this conversation with astronaut John Shoffner, I don't know if it provided a different color, a different palette, a different canvas, I should say, to think about a world beyond, and maybe more importantly or specifically, a world where we can create impact for others. There was something so human about John and just boy-like. And I think I would hope that that's the way that I would be. From the moment that they would sort of buckle me into a rocket ship, a spaceship, until the time that I successfully sort of docked with the International Space Station. You know, it's interesting. In a dinner conversation with my kids about this interview, it was brought up, would I go to space if I had the opportunity? And I said, absolutely. And I think after this conversation with John, that yes would only be even that much more forceful, because you could just see it. And I know you're hearing it, so I hope it came through the audio. But there's a sense that he will never be the same, but for wondrous reasons. And I just, my goodness, as we try to understand in a day and age where we are potentially struggling to figure out what community means and to support one another. And for those that look different, act different, practice different cultural, events, and just our lives are very different in a lot of ways. And yet it seems that we're struggling. It Something like this, I think, is something that can unify us in wondering, dreaming, hoping, thinking about just rather maybe how small we are and or how big our impact can be. What a powerful conversation. You can tell I'm at a loss for words because John was just so affable, and he allowed me to take him down sort of at the galaxy, as it were, or a rabbit hole of sorts, to just understand him and the impact that traveling to space had on him. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you went there with me as well. Until next time.
Thanks for taking the plunge into HeadRoom, where we uncover the why behind the what and who impacting our lives. HeadRoom is a production of Rainlight and co-produced by our friends at Old Soul. I'm your host, Dr. Rod Berger, and this is HeadRoom.